Hello, viewers, and hi, Mitali and Girish. I'm very delighted to have them as our guest for our podcast ExCEED today. This podcast is produced by Center for Excellence in Entrepreneurship and Development (CEED) at Gokhale Institute, Pune. CEED, along with deAsra Center for Excellence in Nano Entrepreneurship, is research and advocacy place focusing on nano entrepreneurs, trying to understand factors inhibiting and enabling their growth. Entrepreneurship is at the core of story of economic development and key for India's economic success. SEED aims to bring diverse stakeholders such as entrepreneurs, policymakers, businesses to understand everything about entrepreneurship with a focus on nano entrepreneurship. Yeah, hi. I'm very delighted to hold this conversation today. For the viewers, let me introduce our first guest for today is Mitali Nikore from Nikore Associates and Girish Sharma, who is research manager at Nikore Associate. Let's start by knowing more about the work you are doing.
So first of all, a big thanks to Seed for having us, and really thanks for doing this at such short notice. I think it's more fun that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think at Nikore Associates, we started 5 years ago, and it was an incidental journey. I would say that it starts off with a very small idea of something that you want to research, and for me that was really around women's labor force participation because of course a lot had been written time series data and a lot of research had been done using government data, but I didn't find a lot of qualitative insights when I started around 2017 on this topic on why is it that we are seeing these trends. So we spent about 3 years and built a team of 35 people just to write one book chapter. And that was a big journey. In fact, your student Vidhi was also a big part of that journey. And we discovered through that journey, we did around 150 consultations with women and women's organizations to really understand what is the life cycle of a woman and how is it at odds with the expectations of the labor markets, of the labor force, of self-employment even, of casual labor even, and tried to come up with a number of reasons why, historically starting from 1955 till today, why is it that women are outside of the labor force despite India being the fastest growing economy, major economy in the world. And that has led us to this point today where we are now no longer focused on just this data work, but on enablers. So, be it the care economy, be it mobility, be it, Girish leads a lot of work on gender gaps in the platform economy,
Right.
be it in terms of non-participation in, growing sectors, like why is it that women are stuck in certain sectors, traditional sectors, but not in others like logistics or transport or energy. So that's really where today, our focus lies.
Right. Yeah, I think before we dwell more into your work, can you share some of the insights, especially of the qualitative research work that you derived from those
Yeah.
3 years of work?
Yeah, no, I'll share it and Girish can add on. So I think the first thing we found is that there is a lot of gender stereotyping, which then plays into occupational segregation. And that's also a factor of network effects. So, for example, I want to work as a woman, but I don't see any woman working in a factory.
Right.
But I see women working as agricultural wage laborers. So there's a network effect because of which I am getting sorted into occupationals historically which are low productivity, low growth, low wage, and low skill.
Right. Like what is sometimes called statistical discrimination.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And but that plays out because of gender stereotyping.
Right.
We observe it as statistical discrimination as economists with the data. But when you speak to the women, you realize that that is playing out because of the discrimination and bias in the mind of the recruiter.
Right.
Whether it's an agent trying to secure people for a construction contract, or it is a factory agent trying to get labor for a factory. And also in self employment. Because even in self-employment, you will see a preponderance of women in those sectors which are considered more feminized sectors, like textiles or food processing.
Right.
So that was our first finding. The second was really around unpaid care work. The fact that there is such a huge gender gap in unpaid care work in India, unlike other G20 economies, is explaining almost 9 to 10 percentage points of the labor force participation gap, according to some papers. And in our qualitative research, we found that women internalize the fact that they may work, but they still have to do housework. We got the permission to go. We got the permission to work because I started waking up at 6 a.m. to complete the cooking, and then only I stepped out of the house.
Right. So it's not clear, are they worse off or better off?
They are worse off because they are doing two jobs. We have looked at the time use data and they are much worse off because they are compromising on their leisure time and rest time and health
Right.
in order to do these two jobs, only one of which is paid.
Right. Right.
And then the third factor that we found historically, which I think has morphed, is around the gender gaps in education and skilling. See, when we look at the long-term trends, we know that gender gaps in education are now coming to a point where, at least on an enrollment front, we are at parity, right? We are not at parity in learning outcomes. We are not at parity in terms of self-selection, right? You're self-selecting yourself as a woman still into humanities and not into STEM. But still you have a lot of STEM women graduates. You do. The problem happens now in terms of what goes on post your education. How do you skill yourself to access the labor market? That's where you have the gap. And you have the gap even in terms of digital, sort of skilling and digital divide. Because again, a lot of new occupations and jobs that are coming up are the ones which are, digitally, they requires a digitally literate person, which women are not. So these are three other factors, but if you want to add more.
Yeah, exactly. So, like you mentioned, like unpaid care work is a significant barrier in the traditional female labor force participation rate. Now, if we link it to the platform economy, right? So, platform economy is essentially a marketplace. It sort of gives you a flexibility because you're working on a piecemeal source of work. So, whenever you are free in a day, you can work. So, it inherently gives you a temporal flexibility, right? Like especially for women, it gives you a flexibility to do work when you don't have any other household commitments, like traditional household commitments. But that inherently does not incentivize women to work, right? Because the more flexibility you're getting in the platform economy, so suppose you can work 4 hours in a day. In a traditional ecosystem, you have to work from 9 to 5, let's suppose. In platform economy, you can work for 4 hours. But those additional 4 hours, they are not using for any other paid activity, right? They are using it for the household responsibility again, and they're internalizing those factors that these are our responsibilities. When we did consultations with like women entrepreneurs to understand like what are their barriers, all of them cited this unanimously that they have to wake up early, they'll go to like their shop, their husbands are returning by like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. They have to be back home, cook meal, go again to the factory. Then once that work is done, they again have to come back, right? So the flexibility which platform economy advertises that it inherently gives women is not actually translating into more paid work that women have to do. It essentially that they end up doing the same traditional household responsibilities which are restricting them for participating in the platform economy or like the paid work.
Yeah.
Right. So have you came across some of the interventions or attempts to break these set of barriers or issues?
Definitely. So there are certain platforms who are coming up with like different hand-holding support they are providing to the women entrepreneurs. For example, the e-commerce platforms like Amazon and Flipkart, they have their separate branches which are specifically catering to women entrepreneurs. So they are doing the hand-holding support. They're trying to attempt that they ease out the restrictions when it comes to technical regulations or compliance-related barriers. But again, like Mitali mentioned, the internalization of the unpaid care work restricts them from envisaging their businesses to a larger scale, right?
Yeah.
So if they have sales of suppose X amount, they're happy with it. They don't envision that they have to expand that business because they have internalized that they have household responsibilities. Their professional aspirations and personal aspirations are similar.
Right. So essentially, we want a solution that allows them to substitute for the roles they have to perform at household, which kind of frees them more on the entrepreneurial side. Is that the wrong way to think about it?
No. I think that's a very logical way to think about it. We don't need to, but I think we need to start thinking about society differently.
Right.
So a number of forums and conferences that I attend, everybody says, okay, so what should women do to participate in the workforce? I say you're asking the wrong question. What should workplaces do to have more women? Because workplaces are better off being more diverse. Any diverse workplace is earning, any company which is more diverse is earning more, it's earning higher profitability, it has more diversity, it has a different set of ideas coming in, you can cater to a larger set of consumers even, right, with diversity. These benefits are well known. For 20 years, we have been documenting these benefits. But why is it that things are not changing? It's because we are not giving that signal and we're not actually changing the minds of men and boys. We're not engaging men and boys in this conversation. I'm so glad I'm sitting with two men today, which is not how I normally do things. Because in usual conferences or discussions on this topic, it's generally an all-female panel and an all-female audience. Right? So it's like women talking to women on the things that matter to women. Sure, I love that, but we also need to talk to men, right? The second thing is about signaling intergenerationally. Like within our households, are we actually taking both the girls and the boys together and saying, this is how you need to sort of live your life and divide your roles and have enough sort of a responsibility for your household, right? We're still not doing that, and we're seeing that okay, maybe in urban areas to some extent some quarters are having that conversation, but when we look at the gender gaps in the data, urban is much worse off than rural. Urban men are doing less work than rural men. So there is that aspect. Second thing I wanted to just take off from what Girish was saying about going and coming. It's all about mobility.
Right.
Now, it's very different in rural versus urban areas. Now, in rural areas, we often have just a complete absence of public transport, right? We are just not seeing sufficient services. Whereas but it's still possible to walk. But in urban areas, when you're designing cities, you have started designing cities which are built for cars rather than built for people.
Right.
And if you don't cater to people, then it's not affordable. It's only the people who can afford a car or a two-wheeler or some sort of a personal transport. They will, otherwise people are not able to navigate cities. And we see this more and more that women are almost 50 to 60% of public transport users. They're
Yes.
more likely to be public transport users because they're less likely to own a private transport mode.
Right.
And for their families to actually finance a car or for a scooter for them. So
Or less likely to have claim on using the private vehicle that's available at house.
exactly, the shared private vehicles. So in that case, we need to design metro systems, bus systems, etc., which work for women, but they're not working for women. Even in some of the safest cities around the country, there's a more than 60 to 70% chance that as a single woman walking on the street, you will be harassed. It happens.
Yeah, and the solution, I think it's clear. It's not about like the women, but those who are like part of that problem. Right? Yeah. So so is it like there are like means there can be some economic solutions which might improve that situation marginally, but if you expect a radical solution, essentially it goes beyond the realm of economics and it's more into the what we say societal domain. Is that what we want to?
So
Same here.
I am a huge fan of infrastructure-based solutions. I mean, you can call me an infrastructure economist or a biased economist, but I really feel like, people's behaviors are often responsive to the infrastructure and services that are provided to them.
Okay.
Now, I don't say that it should be just government funding that infrastructure, but there is a huge case for public sector leadership in the case of developing gender-sensitive infrastructure in our public spaces, be it rural or urban. The first form that would take is care infrastructure. We need more creches. We need more elderly care facilities. We need more long-term care for highly dependent adults. We don't talk about it.
I mean, do you think like the some of the traditional norms that the society, Indian society, let's say, has also kind of is reason for slow sort of adoption on both the ends, like the child care and as
Of
well as
course.
elderly care.
Yeah. Social norms is one of the things. The other is also affordability. Like, it's an opportunity cost. Like he said, if you have this lady who is willing to sacrifice her work and provide you with the care service for free, then there's a market failure, right? There's a clear market failure. You have an infinite supply of labor at zero cost. You will never be able to correct that market until that woman says, "नहीं मैं ऐसे काम नहीं करूँगा."
No, but isn't like sometimes there are cases that hiring those service on private market is prohibitively expensive
Yes.
than the opportunity cost of the person at
That
home.
that
Yeah.
also in the case of highly scaled specialized, but for usual childcare the availability is also not there, and because you expect the woman to do it.
Right.
So but with the case of elderly care, when you're talking about nursing and things like that, that's where you have the market emerging of highly specialized, highly expensive nurses or healthcare professionals who are charging any sort of amount, and that's out of the range of a usual set of the population.
So, if some of the policy support is to be provided to improve the situation on the childcare market,
Yeah.
what those sort of things can be?
So what we are advocating for is public-private partnerships to set up childcare institutions.
Right.
Very simply, we have seen this model operate quite well in Europe and the UK, but especially in the UK, because in Europe it's more public funded. In the UK, it's a very clear PPP model with a very strong regulator called Ofsted. I've forgotten the full form, don't ask me.
Sure, but yeah, you can
But
elaborate on how it is.
but the regulator is very strong. They have set up clear standards and guidelines on what a childcare center is supposed to look like, what are the services it's supposed to provide, what should be the qualifications of the personnel who work in that childcare center, what is even the ratio of the personnel to number of children, etc., etc. And the best part is that the fees for the childcare center is linked to the income of the family, ability to pay rather than any other sort of principle. So we've given that model here as well to the ministry, and a few weeks ago we had the creche norms releasing. The minister launched the entire discussion around the national minimum guidelines for creches have now been released by the Ministry of Women. We are now working on a PPP based solution where CSR and private sector can come in, finance a childcare center or a creche, which can be then run by an NGO or community based organization.
Right, but means linking the mobility, childcare, and labor force participation issue, and kind of hectic sort of mess Indian cities are sometimes.
Yeah.
Locating these childcare places should be also an important choice.
Absolutely,
right?
and that's where the gender responsive urban planning guidelines come in. That is exactly why in Mumbai they're actually considering the BMC is considering having creches at metro stations because they have land available. It's a transit point and it's safe. Because it's in a government setup, and the state government can give the land and make the space available. So in Mumbai, they are coming up with this kind of innovative solution. Every city has to plan for itself. It cannot be that the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs gives you a checklist and says, "यहाँ पे ये इतने square meters पे होना चाहिए." Sure, you can give guidelines of, okay, you have to serve 300, 500, these many square kilometer of radius. But you cannot dictate to a city where it should be placed. That has to be the city's choice.
Right. So, I believe in the nursing sort of market, there has been a silent revolution in the last few years. Right? Like if you are seeing the many institutes have come up which have been training nurses. There are several sort of courses from like 6-month diploma to a full-fledged degree, and now India, because the private hospitals have emerged on a big sort of thing, and perhaps COVID was the impetus to that whole thing. Do you think even in the childcare space now there is a whole skilling entrepreneurship opportunity emerging? Yes.
You want to give the example of nursing from yesterday?
Yeah, so in fact, like, we are doing field work across Maharashtra, and we came across this. So there's this one NGO which is facilitating the skilling for different, women like across the age spectrum. So there was this one woman who graduated from like the skilling organization, and she ended up starting her own, like, like the tailoring store, and there were women who started their beauty parlor. They are doing really well, right? So that is directly a result of the skilling that happens, and that can exactly be replicated to the specialized skilling like you're talking about, like nursing. And there are central based schemes like Palna scheme, like Mitali, you know about that. So there it is essential to have, there's a lot of void and vacuum in
Yes.
terms of people who are skilled in this space, and there is a lot of opportunity to start these kind of daycare and childcare facilities,
Yeah.
especially in the like rural leg, right? Because in the urban spaces we still feel that and still see that people are really talking about it, but in rural areas where there's absolutely necessary, there is no conversation of that similar sort happening.
And on nursing, I was in Kochi 2 days ago, which is the epicenter of nursing.
Right.
So what is happening in Kochi? You have millions of nursing colleges,
Yeah.
right? Across, I mean Kerala, not
Yeah.
just Kochi, but across Kerala. Millions of graduates. उसमें से 95% are going abroad.
Yeah. It's planned that way. Like,
It's planned that way. The agents have contracts with them even
Yeah.
before they graduate. In fact, some of them, their fees is also paid by the agents itself. That as soon as you graduate, you're off to this country, that country, etc. Now, Kerala's big problem is they don't have enough nurses of their own in the state to look after the people of the state.
Right.
So they've started a guest worker program so that people from other states can come to Kerala, enroll in nursing colleges, and then choose. Again, they can also go abroad, but they can work in Kerala as well, and they get the status of a guest worker.
Right.
And men are also taking this up.
Yes.
So, that entire notion of a care worker being a woman is also changing as the market for care
Yes.
workers is growing. And like Girish said, there's a huge opportunity for women entrepreneurs to come in and start nano or micro enterprises which focus on childcare and elderly care in rural areas. It's one of the best models we can have because it's a skill that they might relatively be easier for them to access. There is a childcare assistant QP qualification pack that NSDC has approved.
Right.
It is available, but I honestly feel like in this case the skill training has to be more like a recognition of prior learning or just a on the job kind of training, because you don't necessarily need too much of formal training in this area.
Right.
Definitely some you do, and if we start doing more of that, especially for Anganwadi workers. Now Anganwadis are getting expanded. There is a new scheme to bring in childcare centers at Anganwadis. The ministry has launched that in December itself. I was there at the launch, and that's the idea. You want skilled childcare center managers,
Right.
but we have to find them in our community, right?
Yes,
कहीं
yes.
मतलब ऊपर से तो नहीं आएंगे.
Exactly.
यहीं से we have to
That
skill
means
them up.
the market making is a big challenge.
Yes,
there, right?
it
Like,
is. It is. But the government is taking a lead. And I think it has to be the government taking a lead, because until we have that first set of, 1 million childcare minders across the country, you cannot have this situation of, that trickling down.
Yeah, that's true, and I believe like there are like lots of players in that, and perhaps frameworks like national education policy should also need to consider a similar sort of thing, because I believe like that's a important choice for many urban parents when they are
Yes.
thinking about schools. Like, means one of the good factor about some of these European or other countries is they
Yes.
integrate these problems. Right? They
Yes.
understand that work life of parents require them to kind of substitute for these many hours away from parenting, and then school and daycare has to kind of take a complementary role into that.
Correct.
Indian schooling system is yet to wake up to that reality.
The Indian schooling system is based on calling a mother at any time of the day.
Exactly.
Your kid is, doing this.
If
Come
anything,
immediately.
it just deepens the stereotype.
Yes, and they will never call the dads.
Yeah.
They will always call the moms, which is, there are schools in Delhi NCR, fantastic schools which are highly, sought after schools, who don't take students of working women even today. It's an unsaid rule. And I know this because my husband like works with a lot of schools, and we know this that this person will not get an admission here if their mom is
And
working.
it leads to that interesting phenomena sometimes observed where some of the women with a great labor force participation track record and good education attainment ends up mysteriously dropping out of the workforce.
In Calcutta, it's a phenomenon, by the way. It's called the class 10 syndrome. So, all the highly qualified mothers who are also, I mean, in Calcutta, you'll have a lot of entrepreneurs as well, like large entrepreneurs, medium as well. And the women are working there. You are seeing that the wife or the daughter of the family, is involved and very, not just involved, but leading certain parts of the family business. Minute the child is in class 10, she is expected that for 3 years you'll now be on a break because the kids' applications have to be done for all these colleges abroad and everything. Boards are there are tuitions to be done, and this is your entire role for 3 years.
Right, I think, yeah, I mean, class 10 ends up troubling Indians in myriad ways, right? Like, I think there are no two ways about it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think fascinating conversation, and I think it can go along and along, but I think with our kind of paucity of time, we need to stop here. Again, thanks a lot
Thank
agreeing
you.
on a very short notice for this podcast. And yeah, thanks all our viewers for watching it. Stay tuned for our next episodes of ExCEED. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitali.
Thank you.